Hey boys and girls, Mr. Harness here. Today I'll be reading from the wonderful book Wonder. My pages that I'll be focusing in on for this evening is 257 to 270. The first chapter I'll be reading is called Day 1. The bus ride went really fast. I sat by the window and Jack was next to me in the aisle seat. Summer and Maya were in front of us. Everybody was in a good mood. Kind of loud and laughing a lot. I noticed right away that Julian wasn't on our bus, even though Henry and Miles were. I figured he must be on the other bus, but then I overheard Miles tell Amos that Julian ditched the grade trip because he thought the whole nature retreat thing was quote-unquote dorky. I got totally pumped because dealing with Julian for 3 days in a row and 2 nights was a major reason I was nervous about the whole trip. So without him there, I could really just relax and not worry about anything. We got to the nature reserve at around noon. The first thing we did was put our stuff down in the cabins. Then there were 3 bunk beds to every room, so me and Jack did rock, paper, scissors for the top bunk, and I won. Woohoo! And the other guys in the room were Reed and Tristan, and Pablo and Nino. After we had lunch in the main cabin, we all went on a 2-hour guided nature hike through the woods. But these were not woods like the kind they have in Central Park. They were real woods, giant trees that almost totally blocked out the sunlight. Tangles of leaves and fallen tree trunks, howls and chirps and really loud bird calls. There was a slight fog too, like a pale blue smoke all around us. It was so cool. The nature guide pointed everything out to us. The different types of trees we were passing, the insects inside the dead logs on the trail, the signs of deer and bears in the woods, what types of birds were whistling, and where to look for them. I realized that my Lobot hearing aids actually made me hear better than most people because I was usually the first person to hear a new bird call. It started to rain as we headed back to camp. I pulled out my rain poncho and put the hood up so my hearing aids wouldn't get wet, but my jeans and shoes got soaked by the time we reached our cabins. Everyone got soaked. It was fun though. We had a wet sock fight in the cabin. Since it rained for the rest of the day, we spent most of the afternoon goofing off in the rec room. They had a ping pong table and an old style arcade games like Pac-Man and Missile Command that we played until dinner time. Luckily, by then it had stopped raining, so we got to have a real campfire cookout. The log benches around the campfire were still a little damp, but we threw our jackets over them and hung them out by the fire, toasting s'mores and eating the best roasted hot dogs I have ever tasted. Mom was right about the mosquitoes. There were tons of them, but luckily I spritzed myself before I left the cabin and I wasn't eaten alive like some of the other kids were. I loved hanging out by the campfire after dark. I loved the way bits of fire dust would float up and disappear into the night air, and how the fire lit up people's faces. I loved the sound the fire made too, and how the woods were so dark that you couldn't see anything around, and you'd look up and see a billion stars in the sky. The sky doesn't look like that in North River Heights. I've seen it look like that in Montauk, though, like someone sprinkled salt on a shiny black table. I was so tired when I got back to the cabin that I didn't need to pull out the book to read. I fell asleep almost as fast as my head hit the pillow. And maybe I dreamed about the stars. I don't know. My next chapter, boys and girls, is called The Fairgrounds. The next day was great as the first day. We went horseback riding in the morning, and then in the afternoon we rappelled up some ginormous trees with the help of the nature guides. By the time we got back to the cabins for dinner, we were all really tired again. After dinner, they told us we had an hour to rest, and then we were going to take a 15-minute bus ride to the fairgrounds for an outdoor movie night. I hadn't had the chance to write a letter to Mom and Dad in VA yet, so I wrote one telling them all about the stuff that we did that day and the day before. I pictured myself reading it to them out loud when I got back. since there was just no way the letter would get home before I did. When we got back to the fairgrounds, the sun was starting to set. It was about 7:30. The shadows were really long on the grass, and the clouds were pink and orange. It looked like someone had taken sidewalk chalk and smudged the colors across the sky with their fingers. It's not that I haven't seen nice sunsets before in the city, because I have, slivers of sunsets between buildings, but I wasn't used to seeing so much sky in every direction. Out here in the fairgrounds, I could understand why ancient people used to think the world was flat and the sky was a dome that closed in on top of it. That's what it looked like from the fairgrounds, in the middle of the huge open field. Because we were the first school to arrive, we got to run around the field all we wanted until the teachers told us it was time to lay out our sleeping bags on the ground and get good viewing seats. We unzipped our bags and laid them down like picnic blankets on the grass in front of the giant movie screen in the middle of the field. Then we went to the row of food trucks parked at the edge of the field to load up on some snacks and sodas and stuff like that. There were concession stands there too, like a farmer's market, selling roasted peanuts and cotton candy. And up a little farther there was a short row of carnival type stalls, the kind where you can win a stuffed animal if you throw a baseball into a basket. Jack and I both tried and failed to win anything, but we heard Amos won a yellow hippo and gave it to Jimena. That was the biggest gossip that went around, the jock and the brainiac. From the food trucks, you can see the corn stalks in back of the movie screen. They covered about a third of the entire field. The rest of the field was completely surrounded by woods. As the sun sank lower in the sky, the tall trees at the entrance to the woods looked dark blue. By the time the other school buses pulled into the parking lot, we were back in our spots on the sleeping bag, right smack in front of the screen, the best seats in the whole field. Everyone was passing around snacks and having a great time. Me and Jack and Summer and Reed and Maya played Pictionary. We would hear the sounds of the other schools arriving, the loud laughing and talking of kids coming out of the field on both sides of us, but we couldn't really see them. Though the sky was still light, the sun had gone down completely and everything on the ground had turned deep purple. The clouds were shadows now. We had trouble even seeing the Pictionary cards in front of us. Just then, without an announcement, all of the lights at the end of the field went on at once. They were like big bright stadium lights. I thought of that scene in Close Encounters where the alien ship lands and they're playing that music. Da-do-da-do-da-do-da. Everyone in the field started applauding and cheering like something great had just happened. Okay, boys and girls, my next chapter is going to be Kind to Nature. An announcement came over the huge speakers next to the stadium lights. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 23rd Annual Big Movie Night at the Broarwood Nature Reserve. Welcome teachers and students from MS 342, the William Heath School. A big cheer went up on the left side of the field. Welcome teachers and students from Glover Academy. Another cheer went up, this time from the right side of the field. And welcome teachers and students from the Beecher Prep School. Our group cheered as loudly as we could. We were thrilled to have you as our guest here tonight and thrilled that the weather is cooperating. In fact, can you believe what a beautiful night this is? Again, everybody whooped and hollered. So as we prepare the movie, we do ask that you take a few moments to listen to this important announcement. The Broarwood Nature Reserve, as you know, is dedicated to preserving our national resources and environment. We ask that you leave no litter behind. Clean up after yourselves. Be kind to nature and it will be kind to you. We ask that you help that in mind as you walk around the grounds. Do not venture beyond the orange cones at the edges of the fairgrounds. Do not go into the cornfields or the woods. Please keep free from roaming to a minimum. Even if you don't feel like watching the movie, your fellow students may feel otherwise. So please be courteous, not talking, not playing music, not running around. The restrooms are located on the other side of the concession stands. After the movie is over, it will be quite dark. So we ask all of you to stay with your schools as you make your way back to your buses. Teachers, there's usually at least one lost party on big movie nights at Broarwood. Don't let it happen to you. Tonight's movie presentation will be The Sound of Music. I immediately started clapping, even though I'd seen it a few times before, because it was Via's favorite movie of all time. But I was surprised that a whole bunch of kids, not from Beecher, booed and hissed and laughed. Someone from the right side of the field even threw a soda can at the screen, which seemed to surprise Mr. Tushman. I saw him stand up and look in the direction of the can thrower, though I knew he couldn't see anything in the dark. The movie started playing right away. The stadium lights dimmed. Maria the nun was standing at the top of the mountain, twirling around and around. It had gotten chilly all of a sudden, so I put my yellow monotone hoodie on and just adjusted the volume on my hearing aids and leaned against my backpack and started watching. The hills are alive. Okay, boys and girls, my next chapter will be The Woods Are Alive. Somewhere around the boring part where the guy named Rolf and the oldest daughter are singing You Are 16 are going on 17, Jack nudged me. Dude, I've got to pee, he said. We both got up and kind of hopscotched over to the other kids where they were sitting or lying down on the sleeping bags. Summer waved as we passed, and I waved back. There were lots of kids from other schools walking around by the food trucks, playing the carnival games and just hanging out. Of course, there was a huge line for the toilets. Forget this, I'll just find a tree, said Jack. That's gross, Jack. Let's just wait, I answered. But he headed off to the row of trees at the edge of the field, which was past the orange cones that were specifically told not to go past. And of course I followed him, and of course we didn't have our flashlights because we forgot to bring them. It was so dark now we literally couldn't see 10 steps ahead of us as we walked toward the woods. Luckily, the movie gave off some light, so when we saw a flashlight coming towards us out of the woods, we knew immediately that it was Henry, Miles, and Amos. I guess they hadn't wanted to wait online to use the toilets either. Miles and Henry were still not talking to Jack, but Amos had let go of the war a while ago, and he nodded hello to us as they passed by. Be careful of the bears, shouted Henry, and he and Miles laughed as they walked away. Amos shook his head at us like, don't pay attention to them. Jack and I walked a little further until we were inside the woods. Then Jack hunted around for the perfect tree and finally did his business, though I felt like he was taking forever. The woods were loud with strange sounds and chirps and croaks like a wall of noise coming out of the trees. Then we started hearing loud snaps not far from us, almost like cap gun pops that definitely were not insect noises. And far away, like in another world, we could hear raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. Oh, that's much better, Jack said, zipping up. Now I have to pee, I said, which I did on the nearest tree. No way I was going to go farther in like Jack did. Do you smell that? Like firecrackers, he said, coming over to me. Oh yeah, that's what it is, I answered, zipping up. Weird. Let's go. The next chapter I'll be reading, boys and girls, is Alien. We headed back the way we came, in the direction of the giant screen. That's when we walked straight into a group of kids we didn't know. They'd just come out of the woods, doing stuff I'm sure they didn't want their teachers to know about. I could smell the smoke now, the smell of both firecrackers and cigarettes. They pointed a flashlight at us. There were 6 of them, 4 boys and 2 girls. They looked like they were in the 7th grade. What school are you from? One of the boys called out. Beecher Prep. Jack started to answer when all of a sudden one of the girls started screaming. Oh my God! She shrieked, holding her hand over her eyes like she was crying. I figured maybe a huge bug just had flown into her face or something. No way! One of the boys cried out, and he started flicking his hand in the air, and he just touched something hot, and then he covered his mouth. "No freaking way, man! No freaking way!" All of them started half laughing and half covering their eyes now, pushing each other and cursing loudly. "What is that?" said the kid who was pointing the flashlight at us, and it was only that I realized the flashlight was pointed right at my face. And what they were talking about, screaming about, was me. "Let's get out of here," Jack said to me quietly, and then he pulled me by my sweatshirt sleeve and started walking away from them. "Wait, wait, wait!" yelled the guy with the flashlight, cutting us off. He pointed the flashlight right on my face again, and now he was the only one about 5 feet away. Oh man, he said, shaking his head, his mouth wide open. "What happened to your face?" "Stop it, Eddie," said one of the girls. Didn't know we were watching Lord of the Rings tonight," he said. "Look, guys, it's Gollum." This made his friends hysterical. Again, we tried to walk away from them, and again the kid named Eddie cut us off. He was at least a head taller than Jack, who was about a head taller than me, so the guy looked huge to me. "No, man, it's an alien," said one of the other kids. No, man, it's an orc," laughed Eddie, pointing the flashlight at my face again. This time he was right in front of us. "Leave him alone, okay?" said Jack, pushing the hand holding the flashlight away. "Make me," answered Eddie, pointing the flashlight in Jack's face now. "What's your problem, dude?" said Jack. "Your boyfriend's my problem." "Jack, let's just go, I said, pulling him by the arm. "Oh man, it talks?" screamed Eddie, shining the flashlight in my face again. Then one of the other guys threw a firecracker at our feet. Jack tried to push past Eddie, but Eddie shoved his hands into Jack's shoulders and pushed him hard, which made Jack fall backward. "Eddie!" screamed one of the girls. "Look," I said, stepping in front of Jack and holding my hands up in the air like a traffic cop. "We're a lot smaller than you guys." "Are you talking to me, Freddy Krueger? I don't even think you want to mess with me, you ugly freak," said Eddie. And this was the point where I knew I should run as fast as I could. But Jack was still on the ground and I wasn't about to leave him. "Yo, dude," said a new voice behind us. "What's up, man?" Eddie spun around and pointed his flashlight toward the voice for a second. I couldn't believe who it was. "Leave them alone, dude," said Amos, with Miles and Henry right behind them. "Says who?" "Says one of the guys with Eddie." "Just leave them alone, dude," Amos repeated calmly. "Are you a freak too?" said Eddie. "They're all a bunch of freaks," said one of his friends. Amos didn't answer them, but looked at us. "Come on, guys, let's go. Mr. Tushman is waiting for us." I knew that was a lie, but I helped Jack get up, and we started walking over to Amos. Then out of the blue, the Eddie guy grabbed my hood, and as I passed by him, yanking it really hard, so I was pulled back and fell flat on my back. It was a hard fall, and I hurt my elbow pretty bad on a rock. I couldn't really see what happened afterward, except that Amos ran into the Eddie guy like a monster truck, and then they both fell into the ground next to me. Everything got really crazy after that. Someone pulled me up by my sleeve and yelled, "Run!" And someone else screamed, "Get him!" at the same time. And for a few seconds, I actually had two people pulling the sleeves of my sweatshirt in opposite directions. I heard them both cursing until my sweatshirt ripped, and the first guy yanked me by my arm and started pulling me behind him as we ran, which I did as fast as I could. I could hear footsteps just behind us, chasing us, and voices shouting, and the girls screaming. But it was so dark I didn't know whose voices they were, only that everything felt like we were underwater. We were running like crazy. It was pitch black. And when I started to slow down, the guy pulling me by my arm would yell, "Don't stop!" Next chapter, boys and girls, I'll be reading is Voices in the Dark. Finally, after what seemed like forever of running, someone yelled, "I think we lost him!" "Amos!" "I'm right here," said Amos' voice a few feet behind us. "We can't stop," Miles yelled from farther up. "Jack!" I yelled. "Whoa!" said Jack. "I'm here. I can't see a thing." Are you sure we lost them?" Henry asked, letting go of my arm. That's why I realized that he'd be the one who was pulling me as we ran. "Yeah, shh. Let's listen." We all got super quiet, listening for footsteps in the dark. All we could hear were the crickets and frogs and our own late crazy panting. We were out of breath, stomachs hurting, bodies bent over our knees. "We lost them," said Henry. "Whoa, that was intense." "What happened to the flashlight?" "I dropped it." "How did you guys know?" said Jack. "We saw them before. They looked like jerks." "You just rammed into him," I said to Amos. "I know, right?" laughed Amos. "He didn't even see it coming," said Miles. "He was like, 'Are you a freak too?' And you were like, 'Bam!'" said Jack. "Bam!" said Amos, throwing a fake punch in the air. But after I tackled him, I was like, "Run, Amos, you schmuck. He's 10 times bigger than you." And I got up and started running as fast as I could. We all started laughing. I grabbed Augie and I was like, "Run," said Henry. "I didn't even know it was you pulling me," I answered. That was wild," said Amos, shaking his head. "Totally wild. Your lip is bleeding, dude." I got in a couple of good punches," answered Amos, wiping his lip. I think they were in 7th graders. They were huge. "Losers!" Henry shouted really loud, but we all shushed him. We listened for a second to make sure no one had heard him. "Where the heck were you?" asked Amos. "I can't even see the screen." "I think that we were in the cornfields," answered Henry. "Duh, we're in the cornfields," said Miles, pushing a corn stalk at Henry. "Okay, I know exactly where we are," said Amos. "We have to go back in this direction. That'll take us on the other side of the field." "Yo, dudes," said Jack, hand high in the air. "That was really cool of you guys to come back for us. Really cool. Thanks." "No problem," answered Amos, high-fiving Jack, and then Miles and Henry high-fived too. "Yeah, dudes, thanks," I said, holding my palm up like Jack just had, though I wasn't sure they'd high-five me too. Amos looked back at me and nodded. "It was cool how you stood your ground, little dude," he said, high-fiving me. "Yeah, Augie," said Miles, high-fiving me too. "You were like, we're littler than you guys." I didn't even know what else to say, but I laughed. "Very cool," said Henry, and high-fived me too. "Sorry I ripped your sweatshirt." I looked down and my sweatshirt was completely torn down the middle. One sleeve was ripped off and the other was so stretched out it was hanging down to my knees. "Hey, your elbow's bleeding," said Jack. "Yeah," I shrugged. "It's starting to hurt a lot." "You okay?" said Jack, seeing my face. I nodded. Suddenly I felt like crying, and I was trying really hard not to do that. "Wait, your hearing aids are gone," said Jack. "What?" I yelled, touching my ears. The hearing aid band was definitely gone. That's why I felt like I was underwater. "Oh no," I said, and that's when I couldn't do it anymore. Everything had just happened, kind of hit me, and I couldn't help it. I started to cry. Like big crying, what my mom would call the waterworks. I was so embarrassed, I hid my face in my arm, but I couldn't stop the tears from coming. The guys were really nice to me, though. They patted me on the back. "You're okay, dude. It's okay," they said. You're one brave little dude. You know that?" said Amos, putting his arm around my shoulders. And when I kept on crying, he put both of his arms around me like my dad would have done and let me cry. Okay, boys and girls, can't wait to see who is reading next for you, but the next chapter they'll be reading is The Emperor's Guard. Bye, guys.